My name is Sandra Liede, and I'm the Senior Legal Specialist at HealthTech Finland. HealthTech Finland is an industry association covering a wide range of different solutions in the health tech area. So we represent medical devices, IVD devices, digital health solutions, also the wellness market. We have some notified bodies in our membership. So basically what we aim to do is to provide a platform for networking and to make it easier to support the growth and internationalization of our member companies, and to help them find the experts that they need to navigate this very complex regulatory market. So my topic today is how to apply multiple regulatory requirements and create a solid regulatory strategy. I have to disclose that I'm not going to be answering all of this myself today, so I'm very happy that we have two great presentations after my presentation, and I think that the chain of these presentations will give you a very good and optimistic view to how you can navigate in this regulatory context. But let's begin with the big picture. So in Finland and basically in Europe or in the other global markets, there is no single definition for what counts as health tech. You may have heard MedTech, health tech, wellness, medical devices, and different kinds of terminology that is being used within this context. So this is a very complex ecosystem, and it includes various different actors and roles in the field. For example, we have startups, we have scale-ups, we have very large corporations, then we have Finnish subsidiaries of international companies in our local market. Many hospitals and clinics are within this ecosystem. There is a lot of in-house manufacturing going on in those areas. Then we have the health service providers, we have patient management system providers, other IT providers, pharma manufacturers, consultants, and other service providers. So the diversity basically means that any regulatory strategy must be tailored. So there is no one-size-fits-all approach. And how it's approached, the health tech sector, highly depends also on who or which organization is the one that is studying the health tech sector. For example, in the right upper corner, there's a very small picture right now, which even I can't see very well, but it kind of aims to show that how the ones investing into the sector, how they have tried to define what is considered the health tech sector. And what we've done at HealthTech Finland is one way to define what is the health tech sector is by looking at who are the different operators in the field. So like I said, we have medical device manufacturers, IVD device manufacturers, digital health. There are the competent authorities in this area, notified bodies, investors, laboratories, the wellness products, etc. So that's one way of approaching the issue. But this is basically the most defining way, and the approach is from a regulatory perspective. So EU regulation, the MDR, the medical device regulation, and the IVDR, in vitro diagnostic regulation, are a very distinguishing element of what is considered health tech, or more like med tech in this field. So if you hear words such as prediction, prevention, prognosis, diagnosis, treatment, monitoring, alleviation, or rehabilitation, these are typically the things that bring your solution into the very regulated field of health tech. And what stays outside of that is more like wellness consumer products. But it's not defining that is the user a consumer or a doctor. It's more of what is the intended purpose of that specific solution. So if you as a manufacturer define that your intended purpose of that solution is one of these that are on the blue, that are stated here as blue, then you have to be really, really alert to the fact that you are stepping into the network of regulation. Now, I wouldn't recommend that you intentionally try to stay outside of that, even though it's very heavy regulation, and you're going to hear a bit later about the specifics of the regulation, because there is actually no area in health, in the health area, that goes unregulated. So even if your solution doesn't fall under the medical device or in vitro diagnostics regulation, it still won't go unregulated. So you kind of can't hide from regulation in this context. And that's something that you just have to embrace and sort of understand that this isn't like rocket engineering. It's very, when you know and have the tools how to navigate this complex area, then it is quite simple. And I hope that you will have a positive outlook after these presentations. But so in the whole context, so you have a health product or a health service in the health field. In addition to the MDR and IVDR, we have a lot of new European regulation coming out at the moment. Some are already in force and some are still in the process of being applied, as are the MDR and IVDR as well. But one of the most important pieces of legislation that has just come out of the European Union is the AI Act. What the supervisory authorities in Finland and as well as in Europe, the European Commission, what they're trying to do at the moment is trying to figure out how the AI Act interplays with the MDR and IVDR. So it's highly probable that if you have an AI solution in the health tech field, you will most probably fall into a category of high-risk AI products within the AI Act. And that means that you will be using both of these pieces of legislation together, so the AI Act and the MDR, IVDR. But in addition to that, even if you don't fall within the MDR and IVDR, you will still have to apply the AI Act if you have an AI solution which is determined in the piece of regulation. Then something that's very familiar to, I hope most of you, is the GDPR, so the General Data Protection Regulation, which regulates the processing of personal data. And when we're talking about the health field, we're very close to processing sensitive health data, and the requirements for that are a bit stricter than for other data types. Most recently, well, maybe I'll start with the DGA, which is the Data Governance Act. That came out from the European Union a while ago, and that's like the wider regulation for how data use is governed in the European Union. And the EHDS, the European Health Data Space, is a specific regulation that's tailored for the health field. And the aim of that is to help make data flow easier from equipment, devices, cross borders, cross national borders, cross organizational borders. So the aim is to just establish that governance system for the sensitive health data to freely flow across these borders. Then we have the Data Act, and this is also not specific to medical devices, as is not the EHDS. So these can be applied to any health devices. Basically, this is a very vague way to say this, but it's not specific to medical devices. So even if you have a wellness device, it can be that you're covered by the Data Act if your device is linked to the internet, and that's one of the pieces of regulation that also aims to give more power to take that data and move it across different operators. Then we have the PLD, which is Product Liability Directive, and that aims to take care of the consumers in different areas, not just health, but that is something that you will be applying also in the health field. And then finally, we have a wide range of different cybersecurity regulations that are flowing very heavily into this field and wider into the different fields. And this is something that's become very important, especially because of the global politics situation that's going on at the moment. So basically, what I'm trying to show with this is that it's a very heavily regulated area when you're operating in the health field. So you may have the medical device regulation, but you may also have to apply a wide range of different regulations. And how this will basically show in your business. The regulation affects every aspect of your business and not just product design. It goes through the R&D and marketing to distribution and post-market surveillance. And compliance has to be integrated into your operations from day one. So when you're starting to consider entering the health market and you're looking for your partners, one of the first things you have to do is try to identify, first of all, that are you entering the regulated medical device market, or is your product outside of the medical device market, but still covered by the different other pieces of regulation that are coming outside from the EU and which are being also strengthened by some national legislation. So once you've identified that and you start looking for your partners, be they in the supply chain or in the distribution chain, or when you're talking about marketing and entering the market, or even when you're in the research and development phase, you have to make sure that with each and every one of your partners that you're working with, that you have identified the regulation, and that regulation is being also integrated into any of the contracts that you're doing with your partners in these different areas. So that's very important, not just identifying what is being applied to your business, but that you make sure that your partners as well understand the regulated area, because that's basically one of the only ways that you can supervise what's happening, for example, in the distribution chains, or what's happening in research and development. And this is especially important when we go back to my very first slide showing that this area is very complex. So we have a lot of organizations and players that have been in this field for a long time, and they do understand what the requirements are, but then there are some very new players, and it's important that everybody understands what the requirements are. Well, in terms of regulatory landscape, the opportunities of health tech are global, and one of the EU's strength has been a functioning EU internal market and the regulatory framework enabling the free movement of goods and services, and the CE mark has been a trusted quality guarantee within the EU market, but it's also a trusted quality guarantee in any other market as well. So if you succeed in bringing your product into the EU market, you will most probably have a very strong strong quality showing in the other markets as well. But however, there have been some major changes in global politics, which we all know about. We know what's going on in the US and what kind of politics and competition is going on with the US and China. And these, of course, affect the possibilities in the different markets in EU as well. So the time to market has become a key competitive factor in any market, actually. But one of the key challenges is that prices are rising, legislative timelines are very long, legal clarity only emerges through enforcement and litigation, and companies have been shown to be shifting resources from product development to regulatory compliance. And these dynamics have also been highlighted in a survey from MedTech Europe in 2024. And what their key findings were that there are certification delays, there are rising costs, market launch declines, there's a lot of post-market surveillance burdens, and there's a lot of regulatory complexity. And because of these things, these have an effect in your regulatory strategy. So what you have to try and identify in your organization is that where will you find the needed regulatory and legal knowledge? This is a very competitive area, but just to make things a bit more positive, there are a lot of service providers in this field, and we're happy to connect you with any of them. Then you have to consider, is it an easy and fast regulatory track? Well, there isn't really any fast tracks or fast lanes to certification, at least in the European area, but this varies in the different global areas. How is the regulatory landscape changing? There's a lot of regulation coming out from the EU, for example. Is the certification valid in other countries as well? Well, yes. Are there additional national requirements? There may be, for example, language requirements. How will the supply and distribution chains be affected? Well, they will have to comply with the regulation, but when you take care of your contracts, then I think that you'll be very safe. How long is the regulatory process? I think you can have a look at the survey that MedTech Europe brought out. There are some very good statistics and data about the situation in Europe and also how much it costs. But in addition to all of that, there is some public procurement requirements, reimbursement, and so on and so on. But like I said, it's complex, but you can find the help. We have a lot of service providers, and we're seeing more and more of these regulatory technology tools which will help you navigate the regulatory framework. We have a very good example that's going to be shown by Heikki Pitkänen after my presentation, and our member companies have already tested this, and they have been very happy because the Lean Entry solution has been able to integrate both the EU MDR, IVDR, the AI Act, the European Health Data Space, and the Data Act requirements. And I'm very happy that we're seeing more and more of these. And then we have similar ones in the different global market areas, but I think that most important for you today is to understand how to navigate this market. So that's my presentation for today. Thank you for listening, and I'm looking forward to questions and discussions, I think, after the rest of the presentations. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I was given the opportunity to present these e-tools that we produce, and EHDS is the topic that I promised to talk about, but let's make it a little bit broader. That's also something we agreed on yesterday preparing for this session, to make sure that you have a full picture and we're not just talking about the EHDS that is still a little bit in the future for everybody. The point here is, just like Sandra also explained, that whenever someone new enters this field, the regulatory complexities are imminent. And this is a global phenomenon, so you don't need to be worried that you are alone with this challenge, but you have a lot of companions throughout the world that have faced the same struggle. So when you are pushing, for example, research from a university to the market, this is what everyone across the globe faces. And this is also what we suggest, that the Europeans could be better if they tap on the tools that, for example, our company and others provide to solve this challenge. A few words about the value proposition that we suggest, that we give to you, is that when traditionally those who don't know about regulations, it's challenging to very quickly have that level of knowledge where you would make educated decisions. We want to push you on a steep learning curve and create a new baseline of knowledge, if you like, throughout Europe, to de-risk the entrepreneurship of as many innovators as possible in Europe. And we've done so very extensively already in the Nordics and to some extent in the Netherlands. And our claim is that we have come to save months of time for most of the innovators that have gone through our services. We do this in collaboration, as Sandra explained. If you go to our articles, and this is a site that I could also provide you a link with, but let's go, for example, to see the release of the EDIH tool and what it says. It provides you with some background, what have been done. You can read about the project from Sitra's website or our own, if you want more information on the grounds of this joint action. But here are also the instructions to log in. If you are a HealthTech Finland member, then you have your own instructions at HealthTech Finland. Otherwise, you could follow one of these instructions to go and try them out. This is an explanation of who's involved in this joint action. So it's led by the Finnish Innovation Fund, Sitra, and we have the Danes involved. And Ilona is here in the event with us, representing HealthHub Finland, and also the Finnish AI region, EDIH, is one of the partners here. So let me go into providing you with an example. And I want to be very quick with this one because Kirsi, who's speaking after me, will provide you with the most concrete explanation on how you really then do it to get your product compliant. But let's consider the EHDS and also the other regulations. And do you know your conditions, where we claim that it's a key thing to know them early, to understand your requirements. And for example, in the case of EHDS, also, although the transition times are still long, 4 to 6 years even, it's still very important for you to understand what is coming up and how you should prepare today. Because if you do some coding, if you create an AI application that is medical device, for example, or wellness, you would need to understand on what level you are required to make it reliable and safe in use. And that's already in this regulation and the MDR, the IVDR, the AI Act for you to follow. So some key questions, some key conditions you should be focusing on is that, is your product a medical device, an IVD, perhaps a wellness application that now comes through the EHDS regulation, or an AI system according to the AI Act, or a combination perhaps of many of these systems? What are your responsibilities regarding the product that you produce as an organization that you are? Maybe you are actually the hospital that is deploying the product or the AI system into use. So the AI Act gives you plentiful of requirements too. And what are your responsibilities regarding the data that you come to collect or you want to use, for example, the secondary use of data according to the European Health Data Space. And then if you are the provider of such a product, for example, an AI system that is a medical device as well, then you would be wise to know what are the responsibilities of your client, for example, the hospitals, and make sure that your services cover as good a support as possible to take into, put those products into use at the hospital. And then the final thing here, and there would be probably a very long, lengthy list of items to focus on, is the transition times. Although they don't apply today, you should know your future and plan well and do things right the first time. And that is enabled by the tools that we provide to have the knowledge as we go right now. And let's go through a case where we have an application that supports the diagnosis made by a healthcare professional. And this is not very specific. It's not a very good example of an intended purpose of a medical device. But let's see what the several regulations tell for such a product. So support for diagnosis by professionals in a hospital. The product uses data from medical devices. It collects data. It is AI enabled. It uses secondary health data to train the AI system, and the manufacturer also claims that it is interoperable with electronic health record systems. So if you just face these kind of questions and you would need to dive into the regulation itself, that would be an enormous job, especially if you never looked at the EHDS regulation up front. But let's see how it looks in entries. Firstly, I need to remind you that it's only the EHDS regulatory tool, the AI Act and the Data Act tool that are free of charge for SMEs and public sector in Europe to browse. So if you don't have access to this regulatory journey tool or the MDR, IVDR tools, then please go to your hub or your university or any other instance and see if they have provided access to those services already. This tool, the regulatory journey, has been developed together with Danish Life Science Cluster, and this actually produces you with a draft regulatory strategy as you take this path. Let me show you a little bit what you are faced with. Your product is software, let's say, as we know, and you bump into topics like the intended purpose that Sandra also referred to. You can learn about the terminology here. You can turn on references to see where this bit of text is from in those regulations. And these are also links to take you to, for example, the Eurolex website or the EHDS in this case, or the guidance documents that are referred into this in these product services. Guidance, examples, and we hope that we reach you at a stage where you only have an initial version of an intended purpose drafted. So you are as early as possible in the innovation, in your innovation timeline. That's where you get most out of these tools and the learnings. Are you an MDR product, an IVDR product? We didn't define that very well in our definition of diagnostic tool. But if you don't know, you can jump on that other tool to do the qualification and classification. And again, the terminology is here. Classification explained thoroughly on both regulations. You can go on this path. And again, we recognize that it's software. And there are some very specific questions regarding this topic. If you want to, you can look where these questions originate from. So it's an MDCG guidance document, step 1 in a figure. If you want to press that, you will see the figure. Let me say that for simplicity's sake, it's none of these, but here it needs to be clear that it does something more complex than storage, archival, communication, simple search, or lossless compression to be a medical device. If it's more simple than that, then it would not be considered a medical device. And that's step 3 in this process of the guidance document. And if you're not sure, this is every bit of guidance that is provided in the regulation itself or the guidance documents or the borderline cases regarding this question. So very little. What we do here, we have only reorganized all bits of information that is relevant from the regulatory and guidance sources by the European Commission, but we didn't make any further interpretations. So if you are still struggling to answer this question, then turn to an expert. And in all conditions, I would advise confirm your findings with somebody who's been there before also. And another question, is it for the benefit of an individual patient? Again, you can find every bit of guidance and examples in relation to that from our system. And let's say for practice's sake that yes, it is intended for an individual patient's purposes. And the final question on the qualification bit, is it intended for one of these items in the definition of a medical device from MDR? And at least diagnostics, we could potentially choose something else as well, but let me keep it simple and move forward. Then the second question is, does this data originate from IVD sources, in vitro diagnostics? And let's again keep it simple that it's not, but it could. And that's where you come to a balance of which regulation it actually then is. Is it the MDR or the IVDR that is more dominant to regulate the device? If more data flows from IVD sources, it would be an IVD software as well. Let me say no to keep it in the realm of an MDR, and the system produces you with justifications, conclusions. They will be printed in the final report. Again, clause by clause, complete information compared to, for example, if you go to Copilot today or you go to ChatGPT, that's only a scratch on the surface on the level of depth and completeness of information that you get from our system today, clause by clause. And on you would go then to classify your product, and as it provides information for clinical to support the clinical decision making, you would say yes. Then it would be just a matter of class 3, class 2B, or class 2A. And again, every bit of guidance and examples that is existing also from the International Medical Device Regulators Forum is provided to you here with links. And let me not go to any further depth of this tool. Let me just go back to my presentation to remind us what we have seen so far. So it uses data from medical devices. This is to collect and bundle data from medical devices. And we claimed that it itself also is intended for individual patients. So that would be an MDR product. That's our first finding. And let's go further. Let's actually take the runway through the regulatory journey to keep the story intact. Let's see that we found that it's a class 2A product, merely informing the clinicians. Then comes the question of artificial intelligence. Does it contain that too? And here's a little bit of guidance, but you will find more when you actually then enter. Let me see if this one is. Let's go through the AI Act case. This is now AI Act in the same entries format. If you're not sure if you are an AI system, you can take a longer path that provides you more guidance bit by bit on the elements of the definition of artificial intelligence systems. Here are those little elements. Let us say that we found that it's an AI system. Let us also say that none of these very specifics do not apply. There's a load of things to consider that take your journey to a different direction. Then you are the provider. That would be the same as being a manufacturer for a medical device. And you would also be worried about your client. So you would take both paths in this tool, the provider path and the deployer path. And if you like, you can also make sure that you know the requirements for your importers and distributors and maybe others. But let me, for simplicity's sake, just take a few steps into the requirements of the provider. Is it placed in the market in EU? Yes, that's when AI Act applies. Are you in EU or outside? Well, that doesn't matter. The AI Act applies nonetheless, but there are some considerations you need to take if it's one or the other. Conclusions, again, summarizing your answers. Now we go through the prohibited AI systems. If it's one, then you are not eligible to put that on the market. For example, an emotion recognition system with some specifics that we will ask you later. It might be that you are not allowed to sell your medical device in EU unless you modify it and make it non-prohibited. Let me say again, no, none of the above. Summary. Then the question is from Annex 1 of the AI Act, does one of these legislations apply? And we find MDR from here, looks familiar. We have a link to the other tool if we need it again. Let's move forward. Is a third party, a notified body needed to run the conformity assessment of my product? If it is, then my conclusion is that this is a high-risk AI system. And I could go through a few more questions, and it might be that another annex also indicates that based on being an emotion recognition system, it's also high-risk AI system. So this is where you can go and check and practice what kind of conclusions you get. So let me go again back to my presentation. Yes, AI enabled, and we are an AI system and the high-risk AI system. Then we land on the EHDS system. We know nothing about it, but let me take you through it. It's in a beta format still, some verification of the contents to be done, but it's visible to you if you log in already. And now my claims were that it uses secondary data to train the AI. Well, the EHDS is not in place yet. You couldn't use secondary data based on this regulation. Not yet, but in a few years, from 29 and from 2031 onwards, you will have availability to certain types of data if everything goes smoothly with the European Commission implementing this regulation. So in a sense, you would want to figure out what are your requirements as a health data user regarding the EHDS and secondary use of data, as it explained here. So you would take this path and apply the answers and the pathway to create your final report and print out on what are the requirements for the health data user. Then the other claim was that it is interoperable with EHR systems. So it's possible that from this system, it will automate the flow of data into an electronic health record system. Let me go back one question, and I would be curious about the EHR systems. This is where you have the options where you might be a medical device that claims interoperability with the harmonized software components of EHR systems. They are explained here. Again, all the references are given, but nothing is really in place yet. You only see the requirements, but it's key information already at this stage if you are in the process of developing that software that you are going to place on the market. So you have this bit of knowledge that you should make sure you are aware of. If you need some guidance, there might be some, again, link to that other service or a claim that check out the guidance related to wellness applications, because there are some key information also if you are a medical device, an IVD or other, and examples provided. So be curious and pop open these guidances and terms and information along the path. And as a result, if I say I'm a medical device, it also asks you, are you high-risk AI system? I am. In this instance, it says that it just duplicates your regulations, so follow the MDR in this case specifically. And the final report, this is how they look. This is one from the EHDS e-tool, summarizing your answers clause by clause and providing the requirements that you need to follow. Essential requirements from the EHDS come on top of the essential requirements from the MDR and IVDR and so forth. And the same thing looks like this in a report in a text format. So this one is from the regulatory journey. It would summarize your answers, what you have given, and it also then produces you with a draft regulatory strategy, 16 pages, where you also get an idea of how long it takes and how much work needs to be done to get the product on the market. So I'd like to leave you there and not go into details. You can do it yourself and find all this information in minutes compared to the months of haziness that is typically the case when someone new steps in the regulatory realm. So what have the others said? They have said that you really start to think yourself when you use these tools. Makes it so easy, you can't get away. And my favorite is the last one, someone who's been there already, recognized the challenge, and it would have helped them a lot if they had it 2 years ago. So this is my encouragement to you to go and learn and make sure you de-risk your path to market. And now to give you the final talk by Kirsi, let's switch to the next step.
Thank you, Heikki. So next, Kirsi Korhonen from Korsi is going to present us how to implement all these regulations in practice for software as a medical device.
All right. So it seems, at least to me, that it's getting a bit crowded here with all these regulatory monsters, don't you think? They're not really that scary, are they? I'll try to show you how to tame them in a few moments. So let's see how you feel about them after this. So how to do that in practice? First, you may be wondering who's speaking. I'm Kirsi. I'm the consultant and owner and CEO of Korsi. My specialty is software as a medical device, especially according to MDR and a little bit spices from the AI Act as well. What I do, for example, requirement specifications, project leadership, process development, quality management systems, technical documentation, and so on. And I'm happy to connect in LinkedIn. And if you have any questions, you can also ask me later by contacting me there or by email or calling me. So I'm going to be concentrating on compliance, especially according to the MDR and a little bit of AI Act as well. But these same principles are mostly applicable to other regulations for software products as well. The tools are mostly the same. And when we're thinking about the MDR, I guess this is something that most of you may have in mind. It takes a long time and a lot of money, and you get a pile of paper, and then you just stamp it to get the CE mark. It's not exactly so. Maybe you'll be wiser after this. We'll go through some basic and what is needed, and then take a look at how to do that in a modern way instead of thus just piling that paper up. Actually, how to do that in a sensible way. I'll give you a few examples, and then we'll take a brief look at a couple of pitfalls, and then maybe talk about AI as well. So how does this work? If we want to condense this in the smallest possible quality management system, this is it. So you have to plan what you will do and how you will do it. And when you do it, you have to document what you do and what you did and how you did it, and leave records of that as evidence. And afterwards, you have to follow up how you are doing and improve your processes and products and so on. So this is kind of the basic plan, do, check, act framework, really. So here's kind of a basic picture of the phases. Looks a little bit waterfally maybe, but not to fear. You can and you should iterate as well. You have to plan something before you start. That is your product, what it does, and its intended purpose. This was already mentioned earlier today. So the intended purpose is the benefit that your product brings to patients or users. So what your product is meant for. Is it for diagnosis or prediction or whatever? So basic things about the product must be planned beforehand, because those have an effect on how you do things later and what is required of your product and development. Then you have to plan your QMS, that is quality management system, that is required, and the processes by which you are going to do the development actually. And when you're doing and implementing your product, it is not realistic to expect that you have been able to predict everything beforehand. So you have to plan, elaborate your plans during the way you're actually implementing your product. And as usual, you build your product step by step. So do not try to achieve everything at once. Use modular design and modular building of the product. So if you, for example, run out of budget, for example, you can decide that now we have a good enough product here and it doesn't produce any risks. So you can move forward with that. So keep in mind, you can iterate when implementing a medical device, especially a software as a medical device. And along the way, you have to leave evidence and traces of what you did. So document everything you did and what you thought about when you implemented your product. Afterwards, you have to, of course, certify your product. It happens here. After it, you can enter the market with the product, but it doesn't end there. You have to follow up the product and improve your processes as well. So you have to make sure that your product actually performs clinically and doesn't cause any risks and harms. You have to collect feedback from your customers and of course maintain the software as well. So how do you actually know what you need to do? All this, of course, might feel a bit overwhelming. The MDR is the big, beautiful main thing that you have to take a look at when you're talking about health technology, and its sister IVDR may come in handy in some cases as well. The MDR has a couple of harmonized standards that you should use. Harmonized standard is such a standard that is compatible with MDR, so that if you use these standards in your development and comply with them, it creates a presumption of conformity that you have fulfilled the requirements of MDR. When it comes to these areas of the standard of the MDR. There are other standards as well. They will be harmonized as well at some point, but this work is a little bit slow in the EU at the moment. Then you should know your MDCG guidance documents, Medical Device Coordination Group guidance documents. They are not legally binding, but they provide good recommendations of how you should actually do things. And it makes a little bit easier to enter the audit phase if you have also taken a look at these. If your product contains an AI component or artificial intelligence, AI Act applies as well. The standardization work is ongoing as we speak. So there are actually a bunch of standards that will most likely be the standards that you can use to provide evidence that you are compliant with the AI Act. I didn't collect them here. You can take a look at those using that link, but here's one. It's about the risk management of AI systems. So those bring, AI brings new risks compared to regular systems, so to speak. So that's one that you should take a look at now if your system has AI in it. If your regulatory strategy includes entering the US market, you need to comply with the FDA requirements as well. And they have a bunch of guidance documents too, which are technically not legally binding either, but in real life they actually are. So there's a direction that you should take a look at if you're planning to go that way. And of course, each market area has their own recommendations and guidance documents that are preferred. So a lot of things to absorb. Let's concentrate here on that side in this presentation. So a few text-heavy slides first. Sorry to say that, but there's no getting around this. You just have to know these things if you're planning to bring software as a medical device to the market. So, as was mentioned, the intended purpose is the first requirement. You have to define the benefit that you bring to the patients. And then you need clinical evidence to back that up. You need to have statements, studies, investigations already from similar products, or you have to perform one yourself if you want to bring a medical device to the market. With software, you can fulfill the requirements of this, for example, if there are similar products in the market already, and there are kind of evidence that they do not produce certain kind of risks and so on. But this is kind of an art of its own, so to speak. And the quality management system, preferably according to the ISO 13485. You don't have to use it, but it's easier to use it. But remember that there are also some requirements that are not covered by this quality management system standard. You also need to manage your risks, and the ISO 14971 is the standard to go to with risk management. And also there are some requirements that are not fulfilled by using this standard only. The MDR Annex 1 contains a long list of general safety and performance requirements, and you need to go through all of those. Although each and every one is not applicable to software products, and some of them may look like they do not apply if you have a software product, but beware, there are kind of some pitfalls there. So take a magnifying glass and go through all of those to be sure which ones apply and which do not. Then you need to have this person responsible for regulatory compliance in your company or other organization. And it means that he or she is responsible for ensuring that you actually comply these regulations, or MDR to be more specific. If you're a small company, you can buy an external PRRC. If you are a larger company, you should have one on your payroll. But of course, in every case, you can buy consultancy and consultation if you don't know all the details. So not to worry. Then a couple of processes that you have to set up to fulfill the requirements. So you have to manage your requirements according to a couple of standards even. Then you have to plan your software development processes and a couple of related ones as well. So configuration management, verification, meaning mostly testing, are mandatory. Problem resolution, cybersecurity management is actually a rising star. It is the wrong way to put it, but something that you need to pay attention to a lot due to the current situations. And of course, usability is an important aspect when developing software as medical device. You know, there are not that many possibilities of failures in software as, for example, medical or mechanical or electrical systems. But aside from cybersecurity risks and software bugs, usability is actually one of the most important sources of problems when it comes to software as medical device. And your product needs to be validated, including the clinical validity, meaning that your product actually does what the intended purpose has defined it does, and the usability also. So you use usability studies to prove that your product actually fulfills its intended purpose, so that the users can actually do the stuff that you say your product does. After entering the market, there are processes that you have to set up, or even before set up, but you have to comply. So first of all, maintenance, of course. Software doesn't maintain itself. You need to set up some processes to keep it alive, to detect problems and so on. And then also post-market surveillance. So you have to keep the product compliant also after entering the market. So product safety updates, post-market clinical follow-up, and reports of it. You need to deliver those as well. And as you know, no product stays the same throughout its life cycle. So a process for change management has to be set up. How you plan to do changes, what if there are urgent situations that you need to take care of, what kind of next versions are you planning to implement and bring to the market. So you need a process for that as well. All right, bear with me for one more slide, please. Traceability is an important part of developing software as medical device. So you need to know where your requirements came from and how they flow through the processes until they are being used. Plus, you have to manage your risks and link them to all of those activities during the way. And most likely you will be using some tools for your quality management system or your software development, and you have to validate those tools that you use so that they do not introduce any new risks to the quality of your product. And finally, you have to compose a technical file into which you collect everything from the design and development, your plans, processes, inputs, outputs, and records of everything, meaning that you have to have certain reports, review minutes, and so on, so that you can prove that you have actually done what you have planned. When starting the certification process, explanations are nothing and records are everything. So the notified body that audits and certifies your product takes a look at these. So they perform the certification based on the documentation. And it doesn't help if you say that, yes, we tested this, if you don't have any reports of it and proof of complying with the regulation and your processes. And finally, a couple of picks from the AI Act. So if your system contains AI components, there are some additional requirements, and these are not all, but a few selected ones. So you need to manage your data, keep records. There are some transparency requirements. You need to apply human oversight to your system. There are accuracy, robustness, and cybersecurity requirements as well. And this information should be included in your quality management system and technical documentation as well. And this is not a comprehensive list, but the most important ones considering software as a medical device. Ask for help if you feel that you need it. So I guess some of you may feel like you're drowning now. So I'll try to throw you a life buoy in the next few slides and show some examples. So hopefully not that much text and more pictures and examples in the next slides. So don't fall asleep, please. All right, so first some general principles. So if you are a software company, you probably have some processes already in place. So how you usually do things. So take that as the starting point. And then compare it to the regulatory requirements and check for gaps. What else do you need to do to fulfill the regulatory requirements? Spice up your kind of usual processes with the regulatory requirements, so that you don't just kind of buy from outside some processes that do not fit your organization at all. That's the kind of a difficult way to do that, and that's the one that leads to the pile of papers and everything feeling too heavy. Start early, even when you have the slightest idea that you might have this kind of a product at your hands. You will avoid a lot of complications later. Things are much more difficult, even impossible, if you try to fulfill these requirements afterwards. You already saw that you need to provide records of how you did things. It's impossible to provide those if you didn't do that when you did the things that you need to do, unless you want to go forging everything. But that's I don't recommend that way. And integrate the regulatory work in the daily routines. Do not establish a regulatory team that works at the one end and the software development team that works at the other end. The line will get tangled between them. They will not understand them. You need to cooperate and think about how the things can and should be done in the everyday life of these teams. They are not separate ones. They are not opposite teams. They are one team, or should be. You can utilize templates if you find ones that are suitable for your type of product. But remember that it's not a good idea to just take some templates and let them dictate your processes. As I already said, if you just buy something outside without thinking about what you actually need and why, you will end up in processes that are too heavy for you or difficult and not implementable in your organization. Yes, you can use, and please use, tools and automation as long as you validate your tools first. So if you have a pipeline or something set up, just decorate it with regulatory stuff and you're good to go. All right, then a few examples with Jira. I know that's the most commonly used tool in software development companies. Some like it, some don't. And these same principles may be used with other tools as well, but Jira is a common one, and I will show you a couple of examples using that. So, you know, you can tailor it. You don't have to use the ready-made issues and workflows. And please do. Model the requirements and other real work as customized Jira issues and the links between them. You can also add different types of links, you know. Implement the workflows of your quality management system in the workflows of the tool, including all kinds of reviews and approvals and everything that you need to comply with your processes. Ensure that traceability is maintained, and design can be frozen, and so the design freeze is one pitfall that we're talking about a little bit later. Here's a simplified basic example showing how you can kind of, in a simplified way, do this. There are also problems, changes, in addition to the daily work. You can use plugins. There's a bunch of them available that you can use to set up this system that you will use for your software as a medical device development. So I'm not a user interface designer, so a couple of very ugly pictures. You can see here that you can implement the workflows in Jira. I don't know how familiar this audience is with Jira, but please do modify them according to your needs. You can add customized fields. For example, the review records that you need can be added to the Jira issues that you use to maintain records of approvals, for example. And you can use the links to implement the traceability. So here's the traceability forward. This is a product requirement which represents user needs and so on for the system. And I don't know if you see this small text, it is implemented by these other Jira issues where the real work is done. And here's the real work. So software development can be done in Jira in kind of a familiar way, as long as you use the things that you need to do to fulfill the regulatory requirements. So use customized issue types and fields that you need. For example, here's a field for risk analysis. You need to maintain risks, manage risks throughout your processes. So you can leave traces of that in the issues themselves and link the risks. We'll see an example later. You can split the work in smaller pieces, and it's highly recommendable because software requirement as such is too big of a chunk to be implemented at once. And here's one more example of risk management. You can also set up a risk management board and use some plugins for that. There are several available. Use custom issue types to include all the information that you need of your risks. And using the plugins, most plugins offer these risk tables or other views that show the essential information defined by the risk management standard for software as a medical device. So information about hazards, hazardous situations, harms, causes, evaluation of severity, probability, and so on. This is too small a picture to show the mitigation links and so on, but you get the point maybe. I would have loved to show you more, but I guess the time is very limited. But you can use, for example, X-ray for verification and testing. We have done that in several projects. It's a very nice tool for doing that. I would have liked to show you also Confluence and its plugins. There are several available that enable you to use Confluence as your quality management system tool and other useful tools as well. And there are also available commercial electronic quality management system tools. One problem with these is that if you separate that from the actual development tools, it may create this separation of teams. So beware if you take or introduce these into your organization, so that these are linked somehow to your everyday work as well. Not just the regulatory team, but also the actual development team as well. They should work together with the same tools. That's kind of my opinion. All right, I promised some pitfalls too. So as I mentioned, the design should be frozen at some point, so that you cannot just change everything all the time. At some point, you have to say that this is the design that we're using. The design meaning the usability, user interface, as well as the technical solutions and decisions and the technical design of the system. It is a bad idea to allow uncontrolled and unapproved changes to your software. That may introduce new risks, new bugs, and you have to have the traceability in place, that you know where did this thing came from, where did it go to, in which release, and all the way you have to know who did what and where and why. And if you let these changes flow into your systems, you run into problems sooner or later. But the tools offer mechanisms for that. And as mentioned, the traceability also for all changes is very important. So make sure your tool keeps an audit trail of all the changes that have been done. Then approvals. You have to decide and define the roles that approve the processes and requirements and so on in your quality management system. And you actually have to make sure that actually those people that are responsible, have the responsibility for approving those things, are the ones that actually approve those things. So you need to think of some signing mechanisms for that if you're using electronic tools. And yes, we want to use electronic tools. We don't want that pile of paper anymore. That's not the modern way to go. But then one thing, balance your way of working with the requirements and risks that you have with your software. So if you have a low risk software as a medical device, how much do you actually need? What do you need, and at what level do you need to kind of fulfill every detail of the requirements so that it doesn't kind of get too heavy compared to the risks. So this is something that you should keep in mind when designing the processes. And why this is so complicated? Because of safety. You do not want to kill your patients or even injure them and introduce funny risks to the system. All this is because of patient safety. That's the good word to keep in mind along the way, why you're doing this. Does this make sense when it comes to the safety of the patients? And I already hear you asking, what about AI? Can we use that, please? Can we wipe code all this? Doesn't that make it faster? Yes, you can use AI in software as a medical device development, as long as you validate the AI tools as well. So you need to define what the tool is used for. Does it fulfill the needs that you have set for the tool? Can the tool introduce risks? So can it risk your quality management system or the quality of your product? That defines the level that you need to validate your tool with. Justify all these decisions and confirm and record the evidence and your decisions related to these, and keep the human in the loop. For example, these blue ones are the ones that I see that AI can be used for. So, for example, you can use vibe coding for designing your product, or kind of a proof of concept that you can use to validate your user needs with before entering the actual design and development processes, so that you get the user feedback. Is this what they actually need at all? And what would they actually need? But please discard that proof of concept and use the robust processes to develop the actual software. AI might be good at finding gaps and contradictions in your QMS processes, requirements. And as we already probably know, it can be used as an assistant in coding as well. But limit the scope the AI tools touch. You cannot or shouldn't allow any unnoticed changes. Only touch the parts that are needed to fulfill this and implement this certain requirement. Do not do and try everything at once. Limit the scope of the AI tools. Verification helper is one purpose that I also see that AI can be used as an additional method. It doesn't remove the human testing needs, but it can be useful for finding some nasty bugs in your system. All right. How do you feel? Is the regulatory monster any nicer looking now? I see there are some questions now. Go to sleep, please. All right.
All right. Thank you, Kirsi. It was really great, and you have such a deep knowledge and insight into the issue, and also this human approach is and having some fun also is.
Yeah,
So
no one says that you cannot have fun with
this.
Yeah.
So we have a lot more belief how we can handle these monsters, I'm sure. And thank you all the great presentations from HealthTech Finland, giving guidelines, and Liede about using these useful regulatory tools that we have also got really good feedback. MDR tool is already quite widely used many years, and these new tools have also got really good feedback. So please contact us if you want to test them as well. But next, these questions.
Yes,
yes,
first. So before we run off. So
yes. So Kirsi, would you like to answer?
Yeah.
Big
So
sum
there's
and answer?
yeah. Okay. I see a question about percentage of data accuracy sufficient to consider an AI tool reliable. There are no actual percentages. No one has defined any of those. You have to justify why you can use your AI tools, and the auditing notified body then decides if that is sufficient. So I cannot give you, unfortunately, any exact numbers of accuracy or any other parameters. Then there was a question about example about validating the tools. So yes, for example, Jira needs to be validated. So you need to have some kind of proof in place that the tool works as you expect it to. So you can use common experiences as evidence, but you can also use your own test cases as evidence, so that if this tool does this and that, here's the evidence that we have tested that this works and fulfills our needs. So first you need to have the needs in place. You need a tool doing this and that, and then you need to show that, yes, this tool fulfills these needs and have records of that. So that's the general principle of tool validation. And that applies to all tools.
All right, thanks. And then maybe some questions to Heikki as well.
Yeah, there was one from Alvin. Is the app does it also make use of AI to solve complex submissions, like type in and describe the software systems, and it automatically gives some advice, for example? So that's where. Sorry, there is some microphones open in the background. That would be, let's say, a very, very complicated task to do. All softwares, anything developed by you as an application is distinctive and different compared to the other one. There are naturally certain pathways that and steps you need to take, and they are very defined. What type of documentation you need to have. That's what we explain in the tools as well. What do you need to have? But then, as Kirsi presented, the end result in every case looks different, and your submission in that sense will also look very personalized and different. So it would be a rather heavy task to try to automate that more deeper than, for example, the authority systems or notified body systems do already. They present you with a set of questions they want to see in your technical file in principle. And that's your best guidance in a way to fulfill the requirements.
Yeah, and I would add to that no tool can actually provide you with all the technical documentation of your product. It's product specific. You need to provide, for example, architecture descriptions and the use cases, use requirements, and so on. So no tool can invent those on your behalf, unfortunately.
Yeah, and if you think of the use of AI, I also like to repeat what Kirsi says, that the same goes with templates, that they are never about your product. The AI, ChatGPT or Copilot, they give you some answers that they might look good on the surface, but in the end, it's about knowing what you do. That's the key, and that's what takes you further. You can seek information, but you might be more clever to find it elsewhere than from ChatGPT to make sure that it's complete and accurate. And that's what you need to get to the market. You need to make sure, you want to make sure that your product is safe to use in the market.
All right, and I guess we are running out of the time, so thank you all once more, and just letting you know we have a next webinar coming on 23rd of May, and this time it's about cybersecurity so please also register here. There shall be presentations from real experts from Tampere University and Tampere University of Applied Sciences. I'll put this link to the chat as well. See you there, and all the presentations shall be shared with you later on.